In this video, I'll be reviewing the Markwell datematic wristwatch. But before I get into the review, I want to talk about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. So this watch was loaned to me by Markwell Watches. They are not paying me for the review. I'm not getting to keep the watch. They're not promising me something as part of, so there's no exchange of something for something here. They loaned me the watch to do an honest review. They said, hey, we don't care if the review is positive or negative. We're just happy to let you borrow the watch. So I appreciate that. But without further ado, let's get into it. So what is the datematic here? Well, to me, the datematic is a dress watch that has a lot of inspiration from the 1950s and 60s. Looking at the top of the watch here, this dial is just really stunning, but really to me it screams 1950s or 60s. We have the outer disc of stainless steel, and then the inner circle of like that British racing green. The colorway is Kelly green here, but it does have a little bit of that British racing green look to it, which I really do find quite stunning. The indices are really interesting looking. We're catching a lot of light here in the studio. We do have a domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on the underside of the crystal, but even with my big shop lights here, it's just going to be casting a whole lot of reflections. So it looks great when you're out and about, which I really dig. We have spear-shaped hands, and then a little arrowhead hand with a splash of green there. Again, the color ties in very, very well here. It's something that I've really come to enjoy. And then the date wheel is quite unique too. It's a roulette date wheel. So the back of the date wheel is the same color of green as the watch itself is. And then as we roll through dates, we have like a lime green, and then white, lime green. And then one of the unique things with Markwell is that they are, it's a company owned by two Freemasons, so they use a lot of Masonic imagery in their watches, including a black 13, that kind of superstitious, unlucky, or I guess lucky with this watch, 13. I think it's super unique and super cool. The case is also a unique design too. This was designed by John over at Markwell, and it's called the Telford case. Essentially, we have a proper rounded case, but then very modern angular lugs that jut out further than a lot of old watches do. It gives it a very distinct look, but then also makes it easier to put straps on, which I dig. It's very, very unique. Talking dimensions, these measurements I'm about to read to you are all ones I took. These are not from the manufacturer website. The weight on this included OEM leather strap is 58 grams, which is pretty lightweight. The case width, I measured at 37.25, not including the crown. With the crown, I measured 39.9. Lug width is 20 millimeters, so nice standard size. Lug to lug is a hair under 44. I measured 43.98 millimeters. And then thickness, or really thinness, is 10.5 millimeters. This watch wears very, very well with those measurements there. I'm going to pull off what I'm wearing right now and swap it here. And truthfully, the datematic is a watch that I've only had a brief period of time, just over a week now, or just under a week now. But I've been wearing it a lot, and I honestly keep forgetting that I have it on. With how light and thin it is, this is one of those watches that, much like a lot of proper dress watches or like small Casios, you forget that you're wearing it when you have it on. Now, on the wrist, I will say it's very legible, even with the hands being fairly svelte. I don't have any issues telling the time with this watch, and the date wheel is nice to have it right there. Some people are diehard anti-date wheelers. They don't want to have the date on their watch. I'm someone that needs it. It's a thing that, if I'm signing documents or doing work, I find that I'm using the date almost as much as I'm using the time function of a watch, right? Pull that back off here. But overall, the design of this watch is very classic, but very modern. It's a very nostalgic feeling is how I describe it there. So I really do dig it. The back of the case, like I showed earlier, this is a very early production model. It's serial number 0000. It's 1200000. So 5 zeros there. This is like the first Kelly green one that they did as part of their proper production. The watch is powered by a Sellita SW200 movement, which is a good Swiss movement. I've owned watches from Glycine that had this movement, and they're really fantastic. It's a thin movement. From Markwell, they advertise -4 seconds or +6 seconds a day on the movement as they're regulated. This model was given to me, or loaned to me, before it got regulated. So this one is just an unregulated Sellita SW200. It's still only running +8 seconds a day, so it's only 2 seconds off of the mark that's, the advertised regulated mark. I think that's pretty impressive for the movement, but again, if you buy one of these from Markwell, it's going to be the regulated movement that's within that 10-second window there. But I can't complain about the accuracy so far. I haven't had any reliability issues with the watch itself. No complaints there. I've not had like the date skip at weird times or it go wildly out of time or something, so I can't complain there. Now, the leather strap that came on the watch is pretty nice. I'm not generally a leather fan, but for a dress watch like this, it's one that I'm fine with. I have tried a Tropic strap. This is a Tropic Type 2, and while not the one on the Seiko, I've tried the Tropic Type 1 on this watch too. With how small the watch is, I actually found that the thickness of the Tropics was kind of overpowering because it was nearly as thick, like it was like taller than the lugs, and it just felt kind of weird on this watch. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. But John, one of the owners at Markwell, he actually included one of these Speedle stretchy bracelets. The watches don't ship with these, but he's like, hey, these happen to fit the watches pretty well. Give it a try. And you kind of feel like a 1960s car salesman when you're wearing one of these. So there is that, but if you got a lot of arm hair to pull it off, I like how it fit, but truth be told, I preferred how it was on the leather, so I kept it on the leather for most of the review there. It being 20 millimeters means you can monkey with a lot of stuff. I've seen them on NATO straps, I've seen them on other straps, but I think the leather strap that it came with is honestly just pretty good. We also have quick detach here, which is nice, quick detach spring bar, so I dig that. The last bit before we move into my small gripes of the watch, we do have a push-in, push-down crown. It's not a screw-in crown. Case back is screwed in, but the crown itself is not. This is not, to me, like a super sporty watch. It's very much a dress watch. Does have that 100 meters of water resistance for, washing dishes or swimming with it, but truth be told, I'm not too bent out of shape about it not having a screw-down crown. I think I'm fine with that. Now, what is it that I dislike about this watch? Well, every watch, even the ones I really, really do love, there are things I dislike about them. With the Markwell, it's not really a dislike as much as things I'd like to see implemented in the future. And the first thing is the luminescent paint. This watch does not have fantastic lume. It's not terrible. I've owned watches and currently own watches with worse lume. But I'm going to take a black light here and hit the dial for a little bit. I'm actually going to hit the crown too. The crown has luminescent paint in the logo of Markwell on the side there. And I do have some ambient light coming in through the window here in the studio. We do have lume on the hands, but there's not a whole lot of it. It's not super thickly applied. Same with the crown, but the crown, you're not using the crown to tell the time, right? I wouldn't mind seeing more lume or just nix the lume as a whole. This is one of those things where most dress watches don't really prioritize lume on the watch in the first place. So it's like, okay, it's there. But I wouldn't mind either having way more lume, and I don't mean the indices, but just the hands, or just nix it as a whole and just do solid stainless steel hands. Minor gripe, either have more lume or have no lume, right? The second minor gripe is with the lugs. The lugs are fantastic looking. I love that angular shape. It very much reminds me of like Omega, where they do their curled or twisted lugs. This is like a very angular one. So it almost reminds me of like cyberpunk stuff, right? Well, I dig them. The only issue is that with the angle of the lugs on the inside, I found that it was kind of hard to remove the end links for the Speedle bracelet. I wouldn't mind having drilled lugs on this watch. Now, I do understand that drilled lugs are an inherently sportier thing. I mean, I'm wearing a watch with no drilled lugs right now, so it's not like it's a thing that I need to have. But it would have come in handy when I was swapping between straps and bracelets for the datematic here. But overall, I don't really have any complaints for this watch. I think it's generally fairly well made. Now, of course, Markwell, it hits that mark quite well. Price is a thing that comes up, right? This watch sells for $729 directly from Markwell's website, and it ships on the leather strap here. Is it worth that much money? Well, that's not a thing for me to tell you yes or no. That's for you to dictate. Do you want to spend a lot of money for a watch, right? When it comes to watches like this, I think the big selling point is the dial. It's a very, very unique dial. I can't think of somewhere where I've seen indices like this, or even just like the idea of all of these elements combined together. I think it's a very, very unique looking watch, which is something I think goes a long way for should you buy something, right? I doubt you're going to walk into the average jewelry store or average watch boutique and see something that reminds you of this, right? This is very distinct, and that's a thing that I really like. I mean, heck, I'm half tempted to actually just purchase this one when I'm done with the review process. So, yeah, would I recommend it? Sure, if you have the money and you're like, I'm looking for a neat dress watch, I think it's pretty nifty. But again, that's a sizable chunk of money. This is the highest dollar watch that I have tested for our website here on YouTube so far. And again, that's very much a personal decision. Do I want to spend $729 on a watch? But I will say, the watch itself is made very well. And I do dig the company Markwell. The two guys behind it, Alan and John, they are proper watch nerds. I found out about this watch and the company Markwell because they attended a watch meetup that I hosted here in Salt Lake City. And again, they're kindred spirits when it comes to watches. They're not just people in the game to make a buck. They care about making a very interesting watch that's going to be a good watch. And they're proper nerds, so they know what they're looking for what they like. It's not just like being trendy. I don't think this is a trendy watch, right? Now, I will say that right now, smaller watches are coming back into vogue, but this is a proper dress watch that's smaller than what the small watches of right now are. And I do dig that. So I think there's some merit in the fact that the company is held by two dudes who know what they're about and are very honest and transparent about what they want to do with their company. So I like it. I like it. Well, what do you think? Do you think this is a handsome watch? Do you despise it? What's your opinion on it? Leave a comment down below, and I'd be happy to see it and get a conversation going. And if you've made it this far into the video, our secret phrase for today is Combat Commander. Thank you for watching.